Thank you for hanging out with us on day one of Big Ten Media Days. So many media days.
Yeah.
3 of them, in fact. Starting today, going into tomorrow, where we'll have the USC and UCLA. And then on Thursday, when Oregon and Washington also make their official introduction into the Big Ten. And, day one on Friday, when they're all official members of the Big Ten.
That's crazy. It's super weird to kind of go through this and be like, oh, well, it's officially official. Pac-2.
It did not upset me or bother me in the sense of, oh, it's going to be weird. But now it feels weird.
Yeah.
It legitimately does. We talked about last hour, the whole idea of this being at your first day of high school. Nothing feels familiar. Nothing feels normal, whether it's the facility, whether it's the media groups, the local radio and TV. Everything just feels different.
Or the buttloads of money that each of these schools are going to be raking in.
Well, that feels relatively similar.
Yeah.
That feels relatively similar.
No, not really, because it's going to be gobs and gobs of money. In about 10 years, they're saying that media deal is going to be tasty, my friends.
Yeah,
tasty.
that's why we got here. And speaking of media, Paul Feinbaum, appeared on First Take, and boy, did he set off to irritate the living hell out of me. He said Deion Sanders would be the perfect replacement for Lincoln Riley at USC, simply because, well, I think he's got an axe to grind with Lincoln Riley.
To me, it's about trajectory. And I think he's lost the momentum. He had that talent. Stephen, you live there a lot of the year. You have to win in LA, otherwise you lose badly. And I think he's losing badly. And instead of harping on Lincoln Riley, I've decided to come up with a solution. I thought about this the other day. Okay, maybe he does well, maybe he doesn't. But the answer is really moving forward. And I believe the answer after this season is Deion Sanders. He's going to be tired of Colorado because, quite frankly, it's not prime time. He's done well as he can with his son and Travis Hunter and all the Stephen A's and Shannon Sharp appearances, but that's going to dry up this year because they're not going to be that great. But you put prime in Tinseltown, and I think you have one of the great combinations in history. We just got through talking about, or you did, LeBron. LeBron has owned that town as many others before him. And I think Deion Sanders, as the coach at Southern Cal, is the answer to the problems. Lincoln Riley is a good coach. He's got a great resume. Deion Sanders just exudes exactly what that community is all about. He takes the recruiting there, which Lincoln had and then lost, but I think he sustains it, especially now. Today, the Big Ten Media Days is going on with Southern Cal. And can you imagine a year from today, Deion Sanders walks into Big Ten Media Days. Everybody else, get out of the way.
It's my own personal hell. I hate everything about this.
What do you hate about it?
I mean, what has Deion, I want Deion to be successful at Colorado, but what has he done to really bring anything to that program other than bring Travis Hunter with him and his son?
Yeah, that is a great point. Lincoln Riley's 74-18 as a head coach. Yeah. But here's the
multiple Heisman winners.
The big issue in that is, of those 18 losses, 8 of them have come in 2 years at USC. And
with a lot of them last year.
And with the Heisman Trophy winner and the #1 overall draft pick.
Yes.
I mean, in that, one of the big reasons why Oklahoma fans were like, oh, yeah, Goodrins, we don't like him anyways, is that they said the defense was terrible there. The defense has been terrible at USC. It's actually far worse than it was at Oklahoma. And Oklahoma, they aren't sitting there anymore saying, oh, we're so glad he's gone. They're on to the SEC. Brent Venables is a fine coach.
Absolutely.
He's doing a good job. But at the same time, they're not at the level that they were.
They don't have the same juice.
With Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley is learning right now how to get out of his own way because he hasn't handled USC very well. And I think that there is something that Feinbaum is saying that there is truth to, in that to be the head coach and be successful at USC, you have got to embrace the Hollywood.
Yes, you Pete Carroll, the part of the illustriousness of USC in that period was the biggest part was the success.
And
but it was
Sark did the same thing. He just a little too much.
A little too much, a little too saucy, as it were. But Lincoln Riley going full Chip Kelly and shutting down practices, shutting down media, blacking out everything. You don't do that at USC. You do the complete opposite. You kind of put it on the table, as it were, and go, this is what I'm working with. Deal with it.
And he has not done a good job of doing that.
No, he had the run-in with the local reporter where they banned him for 2 weeks, and they ended up having to walk that back because Lincoln acted out of pocket. Lincoln doesn't make the appearances as necessary to the alumni and boosters meetings that are not only necessary in college football, but you're behind the Dodgers. You're behind the Lakers. The Rams, depends on how good you are.
If you're good,
if you
right squarely.
The thing is, if you're great at USC, you are behind the Lakers and the Dodgers, and that is it.
Mm-hmm.
That is the level that USC has shown, not only during the Pete Carroll era, but before that. You can be the third best team in Los Angeles ahead of other professional teams.
I just wonder with USC if they're losing a little bit of that momentum with their fan base, though, because they have not done a very good job on the recruiting trail because of who they are, because they are USC, and being USC means that you aren't a top 20 recruiter, you are a top 5 recruiter. Yes. That is what you should be.
You walk into living rooms and you already are ahead of most of the country.
One of the things that USC has been criticized for, and we're seeing it right now, is they have way too many cooks in the kitchen that feel that they have a big voice and it gets in the way. Yeah. Look at their athletic director hires that they've had. Look at the fact that the coaches that they will run right out of town, and rightfully so, because they haven't made great hires before. Well, you went and you got Lincoln Riley, and your NIL, once that hit, was an absolute mess. It's been a disaster down there. There's guys that were threatening to transfer because they weren't getting the money that they were promised in that NIL. And you cannot have that. And on top of that, when you're not winning football games, that compounds everything, because guys would be more prone to stick around and tough it out if you're winning football games too. You can't do it and go 8-5 and have your defense be an abject failure.
Yeah, no, I was talking to Antonio Morales a couple weeks ago from The Athletic, who covers USC, and so was checking in on the NIL situation, and he goes, "It's not money. They've got more money than God. It's like what you mentioned. It's not having the organization. It's not being as prepared as Oregon, Ohio State, or Michigan, or Alabama. It's not having the framework around it, because I believe the last update just came out. USC is the most expensive school in the country. They generate more revenue than basically anyone, just off admission stuff.
But
that didn't even touch the level of endowment that they have. It's in the top 10 in the country.
But again, I think this is where it falls on the head coach.
Yes.
Is that you have to organizationally, and we were talking about this earlier, the new age of head coach is you have to have the hire of your general manager who is in charge of all of that, who is that liaison to, the inside of the football program and those that are outside of the football program, and being able to control kind of how your football program is perceived by the boosters who are funding all the NIL. That's your head coach, and having him go out and glad hand, which Lincoln Riley does not want to do. He does not like doing. And that's got to change for Lincoln Riley. I don't think Dion necessarily is the guy to make sure that happens, because look, you want to see USC fans revolt. The turnover in the transfer portal, that's how their boosters would go absolutely ape, bonkers. You know what? Because of the fact that they'd be like, wait a minute. Like, we gave NIL to this guy so we could land him. He's gone in a year. Dion in Colorado is working right now because he's like, so, all right, our two most highly coveted recruits in my first recruiting class, they enter the portal. They're gone. Dylan Edwards, namely. And the boosters like, well, we're still seeing more publicity and recognition than Colorado football has gotten in a very long time. We're going to be okay with that. At USC, that ain't going to fly.
No.
It will not fly. Now, will the cupboard be as bare as what Dion took over at Colorado? Hell no. No, it will never be that. And if it is, USC's got a whole other set of problems.
Good God.
But Dion also isn't the answer, because he doesn't like recruiting high school kids. And he's said as much. He doesn't go to high school kids. They come to him. No. Guess what? At USC, you better get your butt on a plane and go to visit kids' homes because that's what everybody else is doing. Kirby Smart is doing it. Dan Lanning is doing it. Ryan Day is doing it. And those are the guys that are out recruiting USC in spades right now. And they're out recruiting Deion Sanders at Colorado, too.
And the other thing about this is my own personal view is I was like, okay, let's see what Lincoln does. Year one was above expectations. I thought they would win 9, maybe 10 games, and they ended up winning 11. Caleb wins the Heisman. I was like, okay. Last year was a massive step back, and the only good thing that came out of last year was Alex Grinch getting fired. And that gives me, if I'm looking at USC, at least an iota of hope of Lincoln Riley changing, simply because Grinch was his guy and has been his guy. And everyone in the room was telling him he has got to go.
Yeah.
He not only got rid of him, he made impactful, and that staff and the AD brought in what should be impactful changes. You've got a couple dogged recruiters. Now, they are not living up to the recruiting level they should be at. That's absolutely still true. I tend to believe that's because they have not gotten their ducks in a row, as opposed to being as dysfunctional on the coaching football side of things. But I mean, the flip side of it is they've also lost 3 5-stars that they had committed.
Well, and I think this is where the issues happen, is that when you have the chink in the armor, other programs pounce, and a little bit of the shine has come off of Lincoln Riley.
And I think that's what happened when those 3 5-stars, 2 of them to Georgia and 1 to A&M, left. And I think that's, if USC can somehow find a way to get back into the top 10 in recruiting, they can probably save that.
And I'll tell you, recruiting, it's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job. And you have to have a staff that is committed to it, not just a couple. You got to have a staff committed to it. And that, I don't know if SC has that, because you can get into the door with the NIL money. And again, money isn't everything in recruiting. No matter what you think, it helps you get in the door. It'll help you close. It does not win kids over. I mean, in the very few that it does, they ain't going to be there for long anyways. But, and USC is a great example of it. You're in Los Angeles. You have buttloads of cash that you can promise kids and say, hey, we have the funds to make
Forget
this happen.
NIL, we can get you legitimate sponsors of,
but
moguls.
Are you able to get in and connect with recruits and win recruits and their families over? Because USC, that should be no problem with them.
And
yet it is. And they've lost the good graces with a lot of the local powerhouses down there.
St. Bosco Prep, which used to be a pipeline.
Mater Dei.
Yep.
I mean, they are, and when you start having other schools infiltrate it, and this isn't just Lincoln Riley.
No.
This is a decade plus of we started to see with Clemson in Alabama. They started moving out into the West. Ohio State started plucking kids out of Southern California and off the West Coast. And now
Clay Helton was
they get they get their hooks in, though, all of a sudden, it ain't as cool to stick around and stay in L.A. They'll leave.
They'll see one guy, hey, he did it. Hey, this guy did it. Hey, this guy did it.
And now you're looking at, that's where USC used to thrive, is we fence off our backyard in Southern California. And because we're cool, because we're SC, because they had those pit bull recruiters, they would go across the country and they would
kids
pull
out
kids
of Florida every
New Jersey,
year.
Pennsylvania, Ohio. Like they had the ability to do that. It's not
now
there anymore.
It's few and far between.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Feinbaum is.
He's got an axe to grind on Lincoln Riley, though.
He's missing the target on Deion.
No,
but I think with Lincoln Riley, there are some warts there that are starting to show, and when guys like Feinbaum start seeing those warts, they're going to pounce on them.
I have a real suspicion if Lincoln Riley was still at Oklahoma, he would have a different view of.
Because he'd be joining the SEC at that point.
Yeah,
I don't know. He didn't like him at Oklahoma either.
That's what I'm saying. But that was.
But now that he's part 12, of the SEC, come on, pow!
Yeah, look. We've just seen a few too many times.